Welcome to another episode of the Audacity Show. Appreciate everybody for watching. I appreciate all the feedback, all the love I've been getting. I got my people asking for more, whatnot, and y'all know that, you know, long overdue. Um, what I'm saying? I like sharing information, all types of information. And today, we're going to get a little bit into the politics going on in the news, the media. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot going on out there. You know what I'm saying? No man is safe from, um, you know what I'm saying? Like the times we in a big shift. I've been talking about it all year. You know, the first episode dropped on New Year's Day, you know what I'm saying? And I came out and the title of that was, you know, uh, Order Out of Chaos. Because I knew this year was going to be a chaotic year. The signs were pointing to that direction. And, since day one, that's all it's been. It's been chaotic, and the man in position right now, um, as the U.S. president, has a lot to do with it. The majority of that. But you know what I'm saying? We're not going to take up too much time. We're going to get straight to the point today. You know what I'm saying? This is going to be a series called The Modern Day Warfare. The first episode of this series was called Trade Wars. We talked about the tensions between the U.S. and China and Mexico and Canada, and we seen how that played out. Like, we dropped that episode before the tariffs and everything got announced. You know what I'm saying? And I kind of pointed out some signs to look for, some things that looked to me like they were gonna transpire, and a lot of it just came to fruition. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of it was kind of like bogus, right? They were trying to just fear mongering. And at the time when it happened, I was telling everybody, like, yo, listen, this is what's coming. We see it, right? It's written on the wall. But I also said, man, don't pay attention to that. You know what I'm saying? You got to focus on your inner self, do the work. You know what I'm saying? Stay positive, stay connected with the people. And I even dropped some gems, some financial gems. The stock market totally, uh, went down. Honestly, it didn't crash. I don't say it's a crash, right? We call it a pullback. It pulled back hard. And I had told everyone, this is a perfect time to buy. Perfect time to buy some stocks, some options, and get yourself in position to make some money. And you know, it ended up being that April when the tariffs were announced, right? Um, that was the biggest dip of the market this year. Since then, the market's up like ridiculously. You know what I'm saying? We got stocks up 100, 300% since then. So, we're going to touch a little bit on that. I like to give some, financial advice up here. Obviously, I'm not a financial advisor. You know, do what you want with the information at your own risk, of course, right? Or hire a fiduciary or a financial advisor that can help you out. But we got some free knowledge that's worked for me, and I love sharing free information. So today we're going to touch on modern day warfare, the battle for oil. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to touch on the U.S. conflicts right now with Venezuela. But before we get into all this information, we're going to light a little sage, right? We're going to get the mood right and, just clear the air, clear the negative energy. We're not here to be negative and fear-mongering at all. You know what I'm saying? We here to share information, positivity, and light. But we also got to be real, you know what I'm saying? We got to be real with the times we in. We got to be authentic, right? And as a communicator, right? This is as a messenger. I feel like I'm a messenger. I believe I'm a messenger, right? It's in my cards. There's the time. There's the time to share information. There's the time to build platforms, whether, it's a podcast, whether it's a YouTube page, TikTok, whatever it is. This is the time for that, you know what I'm saying? And it could be anything, It could be your voice. Your voice needs to be heard. Everybody's voice needs to be heard. It's important for us to share information. And, whoever that resonates with, that's on them. You know what I'm saying? All we could do is play our part. And right now it's time for that. You know what I'm saying? It's time for us to unite, get together, share resources, share information, and come together as one, like we've always been, the collective consciousness. So we're gonna start off with some information. I got my notes ready. I come ready. I come with receipts for everything. And first and foremost, we're gonna touch. Some people might get triggered or whatnot and emotional about this situation. We're not emotional. We just coming in with rational, logical facts. Some research I've done, right? I gathered over the past couple of weeks. I've been gathering this information. I was ready weeks ago to drop this information, but obviously, you know what I'm saying? Like, take my time with it. Also, this is something I do on the side, you know what I'm saying? So I make time to share this information. And, the US Venezuelan conflict, like, I'm not really here to defend either side, you know? Born and raised here in the States, right? But, you know, some Venezuelans are opposed to President Maduro, which that's the Venezuelan president, right? So some people, some Venezuelan citizens are opposed to him, while some support him. Just like here in the States, a lot of people support Trump, and then a lot of people, let's just say they don't, right? They oppose him. All I'm doing right now is passing information, that I come across and research, and, making it clear that the decision to be free should be made by the Venezuelan people. In all reality, not Trump, not America, not even one person like Maduro, the President Maduro. It should be made strictly by the people. Power to the people. You know what I'm saying? I had a situation at my workplace where I had to advocate for the people I work for, and I had to make it clear, like, I'm in human services. I'm here for the people. I'm advocating for the people. You know what I'm saying? I don't work for anybody. I don't work for an organization. I don't work for an agenda. I work with an organization to support the people. I work with co-workers and peers to support the people. At the end of the day, if I believe my purpose is to be of service to the people, so then I work for the people, not for a particular organization or under anybody. Like, that's egotistical. That's not what we're doing here, man. We killed that ego a long time ago. A lot of people haven't caught up to it, but we on that type of time. It's that type of time. So, today prompted me to do this. Like, I literally was like, I'm a, catch up on the weekend or whatnot. But today was the perfect time, because all over the headlines we're talking about US and Venezuela. Now, over the past few weeks, the US has had military presence in the Caribbean, specifically, like, my people's in PR, like, we in South Puerto Rico, right? We in the South. And they notified me, like, yo, these people is out here, you know what I'm saying? Their presence is felt because they could see them heading to the island. And a lot of the military presence, American military presence, is stationed in Puerto Rico because it's easier to access Venezuela in the case of a conflict, right? A military conflict. So a lot of them are on the west side, Arecibo, Aguadilla, up there, you know what I'm saying? And they see it. They it's fear mongering. They're worried about what's happening and whatnot. And that boy's not playing. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I've been saying this since day one. He's not here to play. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta it's balance. You know what I'm saying? You gotta know what to decipher. Like, what's real, what's fake. You know what I'm saying? What's a bluff? Or if you playing poker and somebody's bluffing, you kind of got to feel that out. You got to take a risk sometimes, you know what I'm saying? But once you play the game enough, you kind of know who's bluffing, who's not, you know what I'm saying? And that's all I'm saying is, like, the more information you gather, come across, research, do your own research, you learn to play the game, And today the U.S. actually seized an oil tanker in Venezuela, you know what I'm saying, or in the Caribbean, a Venezuelan oil tanker, right? But before we get into, like, today, right, I want to touch on what's been going on between the US and Venezuela over the years. This is nothing new. This is over decades. This is almost a century, right? Over a century that they've been back and forth, right? I'm gonna come with some receipt. So in the early 1900s, right? So, like, between 1900 and 1930, Venezuela discovered oil, right, on its land, and it became a major oil exporter, right? Over time, foreign companies, most of them from the US, invested heavily, because oil shapes, you know, a lot of nations' economy, but specifically in this case, Venezuela's economy deeply, right? Now, what's important about that is that although this says 1900, 1930s, it discovered the oil and became a major oil exporter, just recently they surpassed Saudi Arabia, and the Middle East countries over there as the number one oil deposit, right? Like they hold the most oil in the world. And, oil is, a major resource, right? For all countries. The US don't play about that, Trump's been telling you since his first term, drill baby drill. He's been wanting oil. He don't care where he get it from. You know what I'm saying? In this case, he's coming for Venezuela, unfortunately. But if we get back to the information and the key dates, what right? So like in the 50s and 60s, right? Venezuela was an oil-rich nation, right? And the U.S. had significant trade and investment ties with Venezuela. Relations were fairly stable at the time. Now, in the late 1990s, early 2000s, President Hugo Chavez, right, he became president of Venezuela, and he kind of shifted the politics out there, right? The country moved away from the U.S. politically, and it built stronger ties with countries like Cuba, Russia, and China, right? Which marked the turning point. Now, those three countries, if you think about those three countries specifically, Cuba, Russia, and China, what do they all have in common? The U.S. don't really mess with them. The U.S. opposes them. The U.S. sees them as a nemesis, right? We know the conflict between Cuba, Russia, and China versus the U.S. individually, right? So if somebody aligns with, your opposition, well, if you're friends with my enemy, then you're my enemy too. That's how the U.S. sees it, right? And you can't really be mad at that, right? I'm not mad at the U.S. for saying like, oh, okay, you want to align with my ops, then you an op too. I get it, right? I get it. You know what I'm saying? So in 2013, right, Nicolas Maduro, the current president, he became president after Chavez because, Chavez died. Rest in peace. And then under Maduro, Venezuela's political and economic problems deepened. They got worse after he became president. You know what I'm saying? So between 15 and 17, the U.S. imposed its first major sanction on Venezuelan officials, right? Like sanctions are like punishments, right? So like visa restrictions, asset freezes, you know, they were reacting to allegations of like corruption and human right abuses and democratic backsliding. Like, was it true or not? I don't know. I'm on this side, right? I'm over here in America, right? But this is what was being said. Now, what I want to touch on this part, right, is the sanctions, right? Like the visa restriction, the asset freezes. Why does that sound familiar to some people? Because that's exactly what they did to Russia. When the Russian and Ukraine war began, right? They blamed Russia for everything or whatnot. What they do, they froze their assets, right? Try to convince other countries or whatnot stop trading with them, um, to try to, what I'm saying, diminish the economy in Russia. They forced the U.S. government forced U.S. companies that were stationed and conducting business in Russia to pull out. A lot of those companies pulled out. Like I'm talking about just even basic companies, McDonald's, Starbucks, stuff like that. They pulled out of Russia. They didn't want anything to do with Russia, obviously, because the headlines and geopolitics were pointing the finger, blaming Russia for this and that, right? I'm not here to choose sides again. In 2017, between 2017 19, right, the sanctions got worse. They intensified, right? So the U.S. blocked Venezuelan state-owned oil company and government from accessing U.S. financial markets and buying Venezuelan debt, right? So if Venezuela has oil, right, they're moving oil, producing monetary funds from oil, right? This is the biggest export, right? And then they take that money and they want to invest it just like everybody else. Everybody wants to flip their money, right? The biggest flip, the easiest investment in the world is let's get into the US stock market. You know what I'm saying? Like that economy is booming. It's a consumer-based economy, right? So they wanted to get into the buying U.S. treasuries and assets. Well, if you put a punishment, a sanction on them, and say, well, you can't invest your money over here, right? Now you are diminishing the economy. Where are we gonna put where are we gonna put our money at, right? So not only that, they couldn't even buy back debt, right? Like they couldn't even pay off their debt. So it's like, okay, now we can't invest our money and we can't even pay off our debt. Where we gonna go from there, right? Just think about it in the sense like you came across some money. Maybe your business is booming or whatnot, or you just came across some money and you decide, let me invest in some property, some assets, real estate, pay off my debt, and then the government, the IRS says no. Banks say no, we're not gonna sell you any property. You can't buy any stock. You can't even pay off your debt. Where do you go from there, right? That's the situation that Venezuela was dealing with at the time. So by 2020, right around the scandemic or whatnot, Venezuela suffered a deep economic collapse, just like everybody else, right? In 2020, everything just crashed, plummeted because of the lockdowns and that thing that was going around, right? So that caused hyperinflation, food shortages, a humanitarian crisis out there, dramatic drop in oil production. If nobody's working, nobody's making money, who's gonna buy oil from us, right? That was the problem for every business, especially for a business like that where they need that. They need the global markets to function properly, smoothly, and when that comes to a halt, how are you gonna make money, right? The biggest part of that was a massive immigration. Over 3 million Venezuelans migrated from the country. So we can't invest in the US to flip our money. We can't pay off our debt, right? Now there's a shutdown. We can't even sell anything. We can't even sell our products. Nobody to buy them, and everybody's leaving. No food, inflation's crazy. What does that do? Collapse in economy, and that's what they were dealing with during the 2020s. Let's say, now recently, 2025, tensions escalated. Right, the U.S. deployed warships, like I said, near Venezuela. They disguised it as battling drug trafficking, right? Battling cartels, bringing drugs and fentanyl to our country. How does that sound familiar? Or why does that sound familiar? Well, that was the same thing they said about China. That's the same thing they said about Mexico. That's the same thing they said about Canada. When my last episode dropped, trade wars, right? We were discussing the tariffs, which could be considered some sort of sanction, honestly, right? Against these countries, Mexico, China, Canada, right? It was targeted towards them specifically because of fentanyl, drugs coming in, right? So this is nothing new. We're seeing what he's doing, and it's one person really calling the shots here, and we know who that is, right? So the interesting part is like what's at stake really, right? They're talking about drugs or whatnot, but what's really at stake? And what's really at stake is the oil and economy, right? Venezuela is extremely dependent on oil, right? The US has been interested in Venezuelan oil for decades. As Venezuela declines economically, control over oil and resources become a big part of the tension, obviously, right? Politics. Venezuelan leadership under Chavez at first, and now Maduro shifted away from the U.S. They was like, we don't really need you. We the biggest oil producers in the world. We don't need you. We just need to be able to conduct business with everybody else. We can cut you off. You can cut us off. We don't really need you. The problem with that was that they aligned with anti-US countries, and that pissed off the US, right? That made the US view Venezuela as a rival or a threat. Now, the US accuses Venezuela's government of like being undemocratic and cracking down, you know, violating like human rights and stuff like that, right? Undermining free elections, like a dictatorship out there. And then obviously the drug trafficking, the security, right? Like they claim they were supporting criminals and narco networks, right? They use those claims to justify the sanctions and military pressure. So like, what's a way to get a country behind your decisions is to blame somebody for doing something that's causing harm to our people, drugs, right? Um, the U.S. wants to maintain influence in this area, the Americas, right? So Venezuela's alliances like Russia, China, Cuba, whatever, they challenge that influence. That power struggle fuels conflict, right? So the US sees it as like, Venezuela under Maduro is a dictatorship, that corrupt, oppressive, behind economic collapse and a humanitarian crisis, right? Sanctions and pressure are justified, according to the US, to defend that democracy, to defend the human rights of the Venezuelan people, right? And the safety of Americans, right? To stop drug trafficking and national security from Venezuelan terrorists, according to the US, right? And then preventing foreign adversaries like Russia, like China, from gaining influence in Venezuela is important for the US, specifically for their interest in Latin America, right? That's too close to home for the US if Russia and China start aligning with our neighbors. That's too close to home. They can't have that. It's a power trip, power struggle. Egos, like we were just talking about, right? Like we just mentioned. Now, Venezuela sees it different, obviously, right? There's always three sides to a story, right? There's his, hers, and then the truth. So Venezuela says that the U.S. interference, sanctions, the military pressure, whatnot, is actually a threat to Venezuela's independence. They view sanctions as economic warfare that we talked about, meant to destroy the Venezuelan economy and force a regime change. So, like, they're basically saying, like, yo, listen, all these threats and everything they're doing is to cripple our economy and put in place somebody that they want running our country with their rules, right? And then from their point of view, from the Venezuelan point of view, external powers, including the US, want to control Venezuela's oil and resources. So it's like they feel like we a target. We are the biggest oil producer, have the biggest deposits of oils in the world, right? Globally. We have a target on our back. The number one threat is the US, right? So what Venezuela did, right? Like with Chavez and Maduro, they changed the politics, right? They actually inspired other Latin countries surrounding the Americas, Latin America specifically, to start like standing up for themselves, like Chile, Bolivia, Peru, Argentina, Brazil, and more. They started standing up for themselves because they seen, Venezuelans standing up to the bully. Well, you know what? We gonna do that too. So it's really never been about drugs, right? It's never been about drug. It's always been about oil, and this is nothing new. In 2000 or 2001, 9/11, the towers go down. What do? They go into Iraq and they claim they have weapons of mass destruction and this, and that. They went in there to get oil. They went in there to get oil. They went in there to get ancient artifacts, information. I mean, there's documentaries and stories and articles about military personnel at that time that were confused, that instead of going in there and looking for these weapons of mass destruction, they were told to destroy museums, Iraqi museums with artifacts in them. You know what I'm saying? Like, doesn't make sense, right? If you know, there's a lot of historical relevance in Iraq. Let's just say that, right? But anyways, what ended up happening, right, is that the CIA documents actually came out after Chavez had passed away, and it showed that the U.S. had knowledge that Venezuelan anti-Chavez militias were staging or would stage a coup to overthrow him, right? So like a coup is when, they just overthrow the government. But the U.S., specifically the CIA documents show that they were aware of that. They knew that was gonna happen. They let it play out. Now, did they send the hit themselves? Who knows? I'm not here to say that. You know what I'm saying? This is just the information I came across. I don't know what's true or false, right? I'm sharing information that's publicly out there. They were aware of this. Now, in 2017, the New York Times reported that Trump himself, Mr. Trump, met secretly with the Venezuelan military to overthrow President Nicolas Maduro. This was in 2017. This was his first term. He's been yelling drill, baby, drill for 10 years now. We're going on 2026. He's been yelling drill, baby, drill for 10 years straight. And in 2017, the New York Times reported that he met secretly with Venezuelan military to try to overthrow Maduro. Obviously, that didn't work because he's still standing. He's still in charge in Venezuela, right? So, the sanctions placed on Venezuela, it affected the necessity to sell oil, supplies its country with food, basic necessities, pay back its debt, trade in open market, other countries. There's no the comeback from that is going to take a long time, right? So it's like if we can't overthrow you now, well, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna cripple the economy, force people to move out. It's a tactic to have the people overthrow Maduro themselves. It's like it's easy to see, right? Those actions back then and then the ones today are actually similar to the 80s when they try to overthrow Nicaragua and their president, right? So like we seen this before, like you know what I'm saying. Like I always talk about like the timelines mixing or whatnot. Not everything repeats itself exactly, but there's always cycles, right? It's always similar. Nothing's ever exactly the same, but you see similarities and everything. So the crazy thing was that when I came across this, I was like, yo, this is some wild information. So today, we're talking about today. Trump put $50 million, a $50 million hit, a bounty on Maduro's head, on President Maduro. Trump put a $50 million bounty on whoever took out the Venezuelan president. I mean, that's more than they put on Bin Laden and Saddam Hussein combined. We know how much the American people hated Bin Laden and Saddam Hussein and they cheered when they got taken out. Well, imagine the bounty today is more than the bounty they had on them two combined, right? And the crazy part is that that's not the only hit he put out. He put another 50 million out combined for his three closest associates in the Venezuelan government, right? So the appointed Interior Minister Rondon got a $25 million hit on his head. His defense minister Padrino Lopez got a $15 million bounty on him, and then his minister of industry Isami has a $10 million hit on his head. So this boy put 100 million on the Venezuelan government's head. Like I gotta take a pause for that, right? You gotta soak that in because it's like it's so crazy coming across this information. It's so crazy to even think about somebody doing that. And it just shows you the level of, you know, I guess no compassion, right? These people have for each other. And, that's how you know them type of people they not from here, man. They not one of us. And when I say one of us, like a lot of us been here before. Like we meant to be here. We meant to change the landscape, the time, the trajectory of where we heading as a people, like a human, right? Like a collective consciousness. This man ain't one of us. I promise you. If he gonna put 100 million on another human being's head, he's not one of us, man. Stop it. Like, if you voted for him, you voted for him. I'm not here to talk about like you should have did this. I told you so. Nah, but it's clear as day. They don't care at all. I'm trying not to curse on here, but they don't give a damn about nothing. They gonna put some money on your head and keep it moving, right? So this is this was actually the real reason why in July Trump signed an executive order against drug cartels. He kept blaming drug cartels, including Venezuela's most infamous cartel, Tren de Aragua. So the biggest cartel, the most infamous cartel in Venezuela is known as Tren de Aragua, right? So the U.S. Homeland Security has been given orders, right? So Homeland Security has been told by the U.S. government, Trumpito, to look out for Venezuelan migrants. And this is the description, like this is word for word. Like I came across this information, and it's not only information to the public. This was actually a court document. A court document, like docket number, you know what I'm saying? That was printed out in court, a transcript that stated, look out for Venezuelan migrants who have tattoos of trains. Tren means train, right? Crowns, weapons like a AK-47, the Michael Jordan Jumpman symbol. So like, Jordan Jumpman symbol on your shoes, that symbol, or even a Chicago Bulls symbol. And then finally, the saying that they said to look out for was real hasta la muerte, real to the death, right? Translated in Spanish is like real until the death. So these are the descriptions, these are the signs they told people, like, oh, if you see anybody with these signs, a tattoo of a train, a crown, a AK-47, the Jordan sign, or a Chicago Bulls sign, or real hasta la muerte, those are potential cartel members and terrorists. Detain them. Like, yo, the audacity. That's why I named this the audacity show, man. Like, the audacity of some people, man. The audacity of these headlines. The audacity that this is like really playing out right now. And it's like, I laugh because, you gotta laugh sometimes. Like, this is so comical, right? It's just so comical. It's so ridiculous. Like, the crazy thing is that, like, when I first learned this, right? When I first read this, I'm like, the tattoos of train, like a train kind of makes sense, you know what I'm saying? Like, because they call it tren, right? De Aragua. So I get that part. But, like, a crown? I got a crown tatted on me. You know what I'm saying? I got a, and, not for nothing. When I was incarcerated, I was labeled as a Latin king because I had a crown on me. Little do they know I put a crown over my tattoo that says RIP my grandfather. It was just like a crown. Like he was royalty to me. You know what I'm saying? So I put a crown. I thought that's what a crown meant, right? Apparently it means you're a Latin king. You know what I'm saying? So I actually I knew that was, every time I got incarcerated, they try to label me as that. And I never ran with nobody. You know what I'm saying? Shout out the king. Shout out, you know, I know a bunch of them. I'm cool with them. You know what I'm saying? It's all love, right? But I never was affiliated with nothing like that, right? So when I came out from that first bit, I was like, yo, listen, man, I gotta edit this tattoo. You know what I'm saying? I added a couple things around it so it wouldn't look so, you know, like a crown so much, right? Like they was stuck on the fact there was a 5-point crown, so I added more points to make it like 3D looking, and it didn't look so much like a Latin king symbol. But I thought of that, right? But specifically, what was like so intriguing to me was obviously the first thing is Real hasta la muerte, right? Because there's a specific celebrity that's their slogan, and that's the Latino Puerto Rican reggaeton rapper Anuel. You know what I'm saying? And it's I'm gonna come to a point here, right? Because it's like, yo, what? How does that, make sense? How does these things correlate? Like, Anuel is Puerto Rican, right? He actually supports Trump, which is the funny part about this. Like, it's super comical. He actually supports Trump, but Anuel literally fits the description of everything mentioned according to the government to look out for as a Venezuelan terrorist. He's Puerto Rican rapper, but his famous or infamous slogan quote is Real hasta la muerte. He has it tatted, he has it on his clothes, right? Like his clothing line is Real hasta la muerte. He's actually promoted it. So you can get sponsored, like you can add your brands and stuff to things like it's like ads, right? On obviously NBA has like jerseys now and stuff like that with the ads on them. It's a marketing tactic, but like the UFC specifically, right? The UFC ring, all you see is name brand things, right? You see like the Monster logo on there, and then you see like whatever Netflix on there, Disney or whatever, ESPN, and then one of the things you see in the ring is Real hasta la muerte because Anuel is such a big fan of the UFC. He's always at these UFC events. He's just putting it out there, marketing himself. It's actually a great idea, right? The funny thing is that Trump loves these UFC fights, is always at these UFC fights, front row with Dana White, right? So he's like, it's crazy. He's seeing that every day. He never mentioned nothing about no Venezuelan terrorists at that point, right? But anyways, he literally fits the description. Like Anuel's first hit, like the first song I ever heard from Anuel was called AK-47. You know what I'm saying? They mentioned that as a sign that they are a Venezuelan terrorist, right? He's also known for sporting the Jordan brand, the Bulls gear, right? You see him all the time. Obviously, this was a little, during his come up because now he's just designered out, right? Designer Gucci this, Versace that. But when he was first coming up, he used to have Chicago Bulls gear, Jordans on, and all this stuff with his clothing line that says Real hasta la muerte, right? So I say that to say I don't know if that's related. I thought that was interesting. You know, it would be even crazy to suggest that it's related or anything, or like is Anuel Tren de Aragua. You know what I'm saying? Hey, you can't put it past him. That boy done did a lot of time. You know what I'm saying? You never know. But I thought that was a crazy coincidence because I read that and I'm like, yo, they describing Anuel to a T. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's crazy. Free my boy. He's already free. And I'm like, yo, they trying to put him back. You know what I'm saying? Um, and the last thing I would say is like the court, this was like a court document I found. Honestly, I found a couple articles, and then the one that I gravitated most was like the court document, because I'm like, that shit is crazy. They literally had migrants that the lawyers were defending and were like, yo, listen, in court, they brought it up like everything you have mentioned that they are suspicious about, the Latin rapper Anuel fits that description. So in court was said like, are you gonna arrest him for potentially being a Venezuelan terrorist? That was mentioned in court, which was like, it was unreal, you know what I'm saying, to just read that. But we're gonna get back to like the good information. That was just like a little sidetrack off the top, and I'm like, yo, this shit's crazy. But when we get back to like the real Venezuelan and American conflict, this doesn't just date back to like the early 1900s, right? I'm gonna take you back 200 years ago. So 200 years ago, there's something called the Monroe Doctrine. Monroe Doctrine. So the Monroe Doctrine, right? It was a 200-year-old policy declared that the US has supremacy in the Western Hemisphere. And it also stated they could overthrow democracy in Latin countries by US intervention and military invasion, right? That just sounds crazy right there, right? Like just the sound of it. I never heard of this until I came across this information, and this is why research is important. Do your research, folks. So so first of all, it was created in 1823. This is 203 years ago. It was announced by President James Monroe at the time. That's why it's known as the Monroe Doctrine, right? I think it was signed off by like John Quincy Adams or something. Like that's how, we talking about 200 years ago, you know what I'm saying? Like the US only been around like what? I don't It's been July 4th of 2026 is going to be 250 years of America's independence, something like that. So like just think about it. This is like the beginning of the US as we know it today, right? So it was created over 200 years ago, and it basically said like was the reason, right? It was created was that Europe should stay out of North and South America, right? So Europe, we don't want no more European colonization in North or South America at the time, because America was trying to establish its own, right, presence. And the deal was like Europe needs to stay out of the Americas and America will stay out of Europe. The irony there is crazy, right? But why it was created? Well, it was created because many countries in South America had just become independent. So the US didn't want European countries to come back and take control again, like they did the first time, colonization, right? America wanted the Western Hemisphere to be a zone free from European influence. So they were like, yo, this is our half, you stay on your side, basically, right? The main message was Europe cannot try to take over or interfere in countries in the Americas, and the US won't interfere in Europe either, right? So how did it affect history? Well, the good side, right? If we want to think about it as like pros and cons, positive, negative, whatever. The good side is that it helped protect newly independent countries in Latin America, and it sent a message that the Americas weren't for European takeover anymore. So it was like, yo, that shit is done. That colonization, not over here, right? Now the complicated side is that later the US used the same Monroe Doctrine as a reason to involve itself in Latin American countries, right? So the doctrine that was put in place sometimes protected countries, and then other times it let the US take control and make decisions for those countries. So think of it saying like, hey, yo, listen, no one else can mess with you except us. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, ain't nobody gonna bully you no more except us. Like, what? You know what I'm saying? So, is it still active today? You know what I'm saying? It's not an official law, right? So it's not like a law, it's not an act, right? But the idea still influences US foreign policy. It's one of those like, you know what I'm saying? We're going to secretly sign this off and never get rid of it, right? Because it allows us to do whatever the hell we want over here, right? So some US leaders still refer to it when talking about Latin America to this day, right? It's more like a tradition or mindset that pops up when the US feels the need to defend its influence in the region, like a time right now, right? Why do you think the Monroe Doctrine is relevant? Because right now they're intervening in Latin American uh, countries, Venezuela specifically, and actually, Trump, after the oil tanker was seized today, Trump literally said, we're going to deal with Colombia next. Now, I'm not here fear mongering, right? You know what I'm saying? I love my Venezuelan people. I love my Colombians. You know what I'm saying? Paiseros, for sure. But You gotta see what's coming. Like he literally said word for word, after we're done with President Maduro, we're coming after the Colombian president next. Yo, this boy is not playing games. You know what I'm saying? Not playing. He's not bluffing. We talked about poker earlier. He's not bluffing when it comes to this. Y'all gotta pay attention, right? So, how it connects the U.S. to Venezuela today. The U.S. could use the Monroe Doctrine to justify involvement in Venezuela. So that they, whatever, you know what I'm saying, the American people decide to, like, that's not right what you're doing to the Venezuelan people. They're gonna be like, well, we signed this 200 years ago, and we still rocking with it. That's like, I'm not even gonna get into that because people are gonna be like conspiracy theories, you know what I'm saying? But there's like a whole thing about social securities, right? Social securities, they giving it to you at birth. They giving to you at birth, and it's like the conspiracy theory out there states that you're signing your life away as soon as you sign a social security at birth. But that's another topic for another day, right? So now the US could defend itself and say, like, it could argue that foreign influence like Russia or China in Venezuela tag teaming, right, with Venezuela threatens the US people, right? Now, Venezuela and many Latin countries, right, definitely, I wrote down might see it as a threat. No, no, no. It definitely sees it as a threat, and it definitely sees it as the US trying to take control of them again. Like, whoever doesn't think that's the goal is naive, you know? And again, this is basic research. Do your own, you know what I'm saying? Deep dive into this information and make your own decision. I'm not here to persuade anyone in each way. I'm not choosing sides. I'm not opposed. I'm not anti-American. I was born and raised here, right? I'm for the people. I'm anti-corruption. I'm pro-people, pro-humanity, right? Pro-collectiveness. I don't see color. I don't see flags. I don't see race. That don't exist in my world. You know what I'm saying? Them my people. Them my people. China, Russia, Mexico, Canada, Venezuela, Colombia, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, like those my people. Africa, like them my people. You know what I'm saying? Free all of them. I support all of them. And I'm going to stand by that. I'm going to advocate for them to the real hasta la muerte. You hear me, to the death, you know what I'm saying? So the doctrine that we talking about could either like legit mean protection or control depending on who you ask, right? So that's a lot of information, right? But if you want to sum it up quick, the Monroe Doctrine 1823 was America telling Europe to stay out of the Western Hemisphere, and although it originally protected Latin American countries, it later became a tool that the U.S. used to involve itself in their affairs, which still affects politics today, including the U.S. Issues with Venezuela, right? Now, when we talk about U.S. intervention, I came with receipts, right? We all know we talked about Venezuelan intervention now. I touched a little bit on the situation with Nicaragua and Iraq, but we can dive deeper. This is a long list of countries and nations the U.S. has intervened in, right? We're going to start off with the Middle East, right? Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Saudi Arabia at one point, right? Africa, Nigeria, Libya, Sudan, South Sudan, Angola, Algeria, right? Russia, Kazakhstan, right? Um, Central America, like Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Panama, Costa Rica, the Caribbean, Cuba, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico. Like they went over there and took over Puerto Rico, seized it. They claim it's a U.S. territory or whatnot. They seized it. You know what I'm saying? We know the issues, the tensions between them and Cuba. You know how they feel about Haiti. They don't mess with Haiti. You know what I'm saying? You see everything going on with ICE right now. Haiti's on that can't come into the US list. Free the Haitians, you know what I'm saying? Free my people, say. South America, right? We touched on it. Ecuador, Bolivia, Argentina, Peru, Chile, everything. All of these countries I'm naming were for strictly just to take over the land, but a lot of it was for oil, gas, lithium, resources. That's all they want is the resources. They trying to hit a lick. Home invasion. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know people that got 100 years for a home invasion because they went in there looking for a pound of weed. These folks is going in there slaughtering millions of people for some oil resources or whatnot. And they just getting away with it. The audacity is crazy, right? So in the DRC, right, the Democratic Republic of Congo, they went out there and tried to intervene for cobalt, copper, diamonds, right? In South Africa, they wanted gold, platinum. In Tanzania, they wanted gold, uranium. In Ghana, they wanted gold. Nigeria, they wanted natural gas, minerals, oil. In Kenya, they wanted titanium. In Ethiopia, they wanted gold. In Libya, Algeria, oil, gas, right? Morocco, they wanted like agriculture and phosphates. Mali, Burkina Faso, gold, uranium, lithium. Like these are all just resources that they're going after. In South America, like I said, Bolivia, lithium, Chile, copper, Peru, silver, Afghanistan, all the rare minerals they got out there. Mongolia, some coal, some copper, even the oceanic islands, you know what I'm saying? Like they not even safe. They went out there and tried to get their gold and minerals, right? So like look at the amount of countries and nations I named. I don't even have them numbered, but there's got to be 30, 40, 50 plus there, right? And the similarities are disturbing. They're going in there, intervening based off a 200 plus year old policy, right? Slaughtering people, depleting economies and resources for minerals and oil and gold, and you know what I'm saying? Like they're going in there and stripping these people not only of their value, their dignities, their integrities, their lives, but they're stripping the land. For they're stripping the land for the natural resources that the land provided us. Like, look at what we're doing, man. And I say we, man, because it's like, I don't point fingers. I learned not to point fingers. I never pointed a finger in my life. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can catch me in court pointing fingers. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not going to come in here and say it's just the Americas, it's just the U.S. We have a lot to do with it. I say we because I'm from here. You know, it's embarrassing to admit that our government has done this globally across the globe, and it's not just them. You know, you seen Rome do it back in the day. They came out, the Europeans and the Spanish came over and colonized. Like, listen, that's a Western mindset. We got to get away from the Western mindset, the egotistical mindset, right? That's the external, the materialistic, right? And we got to get back to Eastern philosophy, which is inner health, wellness, holisticness, peace, unity, right? Minimalism, meditation, enlightenment. That's what we got to get back to. And that's the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, the energy out there right now is heavy. I'm in human services, you know what I'm saying? I deal with heavy energy, heavy trauma on a daily basis. The stuff that the stuff that I deal with, and I experience on a daily, listen, man, even a therapist, a psychiatrist, a counselor can't help me with that. You know what I'm saying? I have these things in place, right? Therapists, a support system. We have, support groups to kind of help each other because the helpers need help too, right? The helpers need help too. But the things that we deal with, you got to learn to remove your emotions sometimes, right? Like we practice that so much, right? To avoid burnout, compassion fatigue in this field or whatnot. But that shit's not easy. The shit that we deal with on a daily basis, that heavy energy, that shit don't go away. That shit don't just bounce off you. You know what I'm saying? Like Superman, bullets flying off him. Nah, we think we heroes and we saving people, but we not. We just like them. We just as human, right? So instead of that energy bouncing off us, we absorbing that. And right now what's happening across the globe and in the world is toxic negative energy for the most part. I keep myself in a bubble. You don't see me outside no more. Everybody screaming we outside, not me. I'm glad to say, I'm proud of myself to say I'm not outside. I'm inside. In here. And when I say inside, I'm not talking about physically in the house. I'm in here. We not outside no more. Just think of that term. Being outside. We outside. We outside, right? That means we outside of ourselves, right? We living in this external world. I don't live there no more. I don't live there no more. You know what I'm saying? I'm good with what's in here, and that's what means more to me than anything else external. You can't take what's in here away from me. You know what I'm saying? You could take these clothes off me. You could take this shelter, this roof over my head, right? You can take this platform from me. You can take my jewelry, my glasses. You can take these books behind me. One thing you can't strip me of is my inner self-awareness, my inner health, my alignment with the higher source, our collective consciousness. And that's why I'm always trying to push this information, because I need people to understand we got to get away from outside of ourselves. That materialistic shit, that external, seeking external validation, that ego shit, that shit don't live here no more, if you haven't noticed. And the earth, the land is telling you that. The land is telling you that. When you see the land, earthquakes, volcanoes, and strange shit happening in the skies, I done said this in probably every video. As above, so below. What happens in the stars happens on the land. So when you see the stars changing from a Piscean energy, right, where it was just dictatorship, authority, controlling, right, to an Aquarius energy, right, where it's freedom, truth, everything comes to the light, right? But the truth, right, is more disturbing than the lie. As above, so below, as so within, so without. Whatever you feel in here, that depression, that anxiety, that stress from the high bills, right? No job, right? Kids is sick, family dying, media pushing negativity, violence, chaos out there. You got to get right inside. You got to get right inside. That's why I said order comes out of chaos. Because you need the chaos. You need the chaos to be able to get in order, in alignment. That shit hit different when you hit rock bottom. When you hit rock bottom, ain't nowhere else to go but up. We gotta hit rock bottom as a collective, right? But when I say hit rock bottom, I don't mean the earth gets wiped out. Everybody on here, you know what I'm saying, is off. That's not what we talking about. We gotta hit rock bottom as a collective, right? The energy right now is close to rock bottom. Now, what do you do in these situations, right? Is your choice. You got free will. We have free will. And what do we do? What do I suggest? What does the collective, a higher power suggest, right? Because I'm an extension of our higher power. I don't care if you believe it's God, Jesus, Buddha, Shiva. I don't care what you believe in, right? Our higher power is sending a message through us, through the land, and we got to pay attention to those signs. And the signs are pointing inward. Do the work inside. You know what I'm saying? You got to tap in to your inner self, the shadow work. You got to face those demons, those those emotions deep down inside of you that you trying to run from, that fear. You got to kill that shit. You got to face that shit, head on, and tell them, yo, I ain't scared of you no more. I ain't scared of the pain. I ain't scared of abandonment. I ain't scared of death. Because you know what? I understand that if I'm at a place of peace, harmony, and alignment with myself, right, with the land, with my higher power, I'm unstoppable. We done been here before. I promise you, we done been here before. The signs are there. You know what I'm saying? If you don't feel it, wake up, do some work, and you going to feel it. I promise you, you're going to feel it. You know what I'm saying? The last thing I'm going to do to close this out is, just don't get caught up in the news. I'm not here fear mongering. This ain't no, go build a bunker and hide in the bunker. Because guess what? The best bunker in the world, you can spend, Zuck spent like, I don't know, $1 billion on a bunker. You know what I'm saying? Hiding out. That shit not going to save you if you're not right internally. Because that bunker, you know what I'm saying? You never know. A building fall on that bunker and you die. I don't care how safe you think it is. Now, if you at peace internally, it don't matter what happens on the external. You ready for whatever. You got to get in harmony with yourself. You know what I'm saying? Stay away from the news, right? The only reason you should be using the news is for information. Pay attention to signs. But you can't get emotional and let the fear, you know what I'm saying, absorb you. Can't do that. We don't live in that world no more. I want everybody to focus on ending this year with strong momentum. Whatever, think about, meditate on the wins you had this year. I don't care if they small wins. I don't care. I tell people all the time in my line of work, I facilitate groups all the time in discussions like this about how to be a better version of you. And a lot of the times people are struggling, right? Because they're so hard on themselves. I'm so hard on myself. I get it. You know what I'm saying? But you got to stack small wins. If you trying to, you know, if you one of these people trying to be a better person, you're like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm overweight right now. I'm obese. I'm trying to cut fast food. If you were eating a large pizza before and now you cut down to 4 slices, man, that's a small win. If you was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day and now you down to half a pack, 4 or 5 cigarettes a day, that's a win. You know what I'm saying? If you've been contemplating on going back to school for 5 years straight and you just decided to enroll a couple weeks ago, that's a win. Be proud of yourself. You know what I'm saying? I'm proud of you. You know what I'm saying? We proud of you as a collective. Do what feels right inside for you. Stack those small wins because those small wins deliver big changes. I want y'all to focus on unity over division. I done said it plenty of times. There ain't no community without unity. This is the time to build community, and that's what we're doing here, you heard? So I want us to support our Venezuelan brothers and sisters, our Colombian brothers and sisters, our Chinese brothers and sisters, Russian brothers and sisters, Syrians, Africans, Iraqians, Palestine. I want you to support them, especially right now for the topic at hand, our Venezuelan brothers and sisters. We with you. Ellos son los hermanos de nosotros, familia de nosotros. We with you. We here. We gonna ride out for you. You know what I'm saying? I promise you. And last but not least, that was a big statement, everything I said to close it out. But we also like to close it out, talk about some good things that can come out of this, right? Get away from the fear mongering, right? Focus on being a better you. And at the same time, I'm going to show you how to make some money because everybody like money, right? So we know energy prices are going to go up short term. right? Because of like this oil situation, right? Should go back, back down in the future, right? After all these oil seasons and whatnot. Look at an ETF. A ETF is like a basket of stocks in one, right? It's less volatile, less risky. Look at the energy ETF, XLE. It's a spider fund, right? XLE. It has companies like, Exxon Mobil in there, Chevron, BP has, all these oil companies or whatnot. Look at that. Look at that right now. That's my gem for the day. Look at it, see the prices where it's at right now, see where it's been, invest in it. I'm not telling you to drop a bag in it, you know what I'm saying? But you gotta start diversifying your portfolio. This year I done talked about gold, you know what I'm saying? Not only physical gold, but the gold ETF, GLD. I done talked about silver, physical silver, and the silver ETF, SLV. That shit's at an all-time high right now. When I talked about it, it was $25. It's $55 now. So you would have, you know, more than doubled your money by now. We talked about cybersecurity, CrowdStrike, Palo Alto, right? We talked about AI, Nvidia, Google, Amazon, Microsoft. We talked about Meta, right? What else we talk about? Palantir, right? Palantir, especially at the times of war right now, like everybody's fear mongering talking about warfare right now. I'm gonna hit y'all with Palantir. PLTR is the stock ticker symbol, and I'm gonna hit you with Raytheon, RTX. It used to be Raytheon, now it's known as RTX. Palantir is the one. Everybody hates Palantir. The CEO Carp is a nut. You know what I'm saying? But I see where it's going. And the US is always talking about defense and defending itself. Morally, if you a moral type of person, you're like, morally, I can't invest in that, I hear you. I'm not with that. I wouldn't hold those stocks in my portfolio forever. You know what I'm saying? Because morally, it don't sit well with me. Trading, I don't mind because I can just get in Palantir for a quick swing trade, a couple weeks, a couple months, you know what I'm saying, and cash out. Even a couple years, I'm gonna be real with you and cash out. I promise you, you get into Palantir right now in 4 or 5. I don't care what Michael Burry said. Michael Burry was the guy that was in the movie The Big Short. He just shorted Nvidia, Tesla, Palantir. I don't care what that boy said. Palantir gonna be 5x by 2030. Palantir right now is like $100, $150. It might be $1,000 by 2030. I promise you. I actually seen a movie. I forgot the name of the movie. It was a futuristic movie, or like the year, I don't know, 2070 or something. And guess what? There was a huge building, and the name on top of that building was Palantir. You know what I'm saying? And if we want to talk about defense, this ain't on the stock market yet, but keep an eye on Anduril, right? There's some IPOs coming out like SpaceX, Anthropic. If you don't know what's an IPO, that means when a private company, right, like Elon Musk, SpaceX, goes public. When it goes public, it's publicly traded. You can invest in it publicly on in the stock market. SpaceX is gonna come out in 2026. Anthropic is another AI. Amazon is a big investor in Anthropic. That's gonna hit in 2026. I promise you. Once they land, I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, so I might skip on SpaceX. Again, I might trade it, quick in and out. Anthropic, I really like Anthropic. I'm definitely gonna put some money there. Um, Palantir, RTX, which is Raytheon, and for the people in Massachusetts, like Raytheon is right in our backyard. Like literally, Raytheon is like 5 minutes from me. So, you know, just some food for thought for the people. I want y'all to make some money while we're here. I know we talking about doing internal work and ignoring the materialistic stuff, the external, right? We're gonna make some money in the meantime. Everybody loves money. That's what brings the people. It gravitates the people. I want this information to reach all people, right? The people that want to do the work. You know what I'm saying? Like my as a polymath is like somebody that is interested and learns about multiple things. That's why my associate's degree, I didn't want it in one specific subject. Like I got an associate's in generalized studies because I was studying everything, philosophy. I was, art, communications, and business, all types of shit, right? Psychology. So I didn't want it to just be stuck in one field. And as a polymath, like I'm well diverse in holistic wellness because that's the life I lived, right? Having ate meat in 10 plus years, right? Big into holistic wealth, right? But I'm also into psychology because I'm in human services. I'm also into financial literacy and business, right? I'm also into artificial intelligence. This is something that I've been studying since 2021. We're going on 2026 and people are just catching up. Like me and my AI, my chat GPT, uh, my Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, like man, listen, I make wonders with those apps, and you should too. Don't be afraid of this technology, embrace it. The whole point of it is to have it free up our time, help it create freedom. People are scared of robots taking your job. No, listen, if a robot is available, I will buy a robot right now to clean my dishes, you know what I'm saying? Clean my crib and free up some time for me to do things that I love like this, sharing information. I promise you. You know what I'm saying? Thank everybody for watching. I appreciate everything. I'm gonna drop another episode very soon. I got like 4 episodes that I'm gonna drop back to back by the end of the month. I promise you. And we gonna keep it going. Y'all gotta get ready for the end of 2025. Focus on a strong momentum, peace, positivity, because 2026 is a different story. Have a good night, everyone. Transmission out.